Waxwork 1 was a crazy ambitious movie involving wax figures with a horror theme. Waxworks 2 doesn't have any wax figures at all. Well, there is technically a wax hand, but that's it. Instead, Waxworks 2 is more of a fantasy time travel movie. How's it hold up? Is the sequel better than the original? I don't know. Let's find out. It all opens up right where the first movie left off, with the burning of the Waxwork Museum. The only thing that manages to escape is a zombie hand and Mark and Sarah, who's been recast for this one because the director of both these movies, Anthony Hickox, was dating Deborah Foreman, the original Sarah. They broke up before Waxworks 2, and apparently it was pretty messy, so she didn't want to return. Which is a shame, but the new Sarah does a good job too. Anyway, they hop in a cab and the hand jumps in for a ride, all the way back to Sarah's apartment, where we see her dad waiting up for her. He yells at his daughter for being late, not knowing the night she's had, and tells her to go straight to bed.
Shut up!
Little do they know, however, the night isn't over yet.
I told you to go to bed.
The zombie hand attacks Dad, first strangling him, but Sarah comes in to save her father. They fight for a bit, but eventually it gets a hold of a hammer and kills the guy. Sarah manages to get the hand into the garbage disposal, and after a bloodbath that would rival Carrie, that's the end of that. But it's far from over for our heroes, as now Sarah has to prove her innocence. She tells the truth, which is probably a mistake.
Objection, Your Honor.
Who's gonna believe that she fought a horde of wax monsters where the only survivor was a zombie hand and hitched a ride on their cab to kill her father?
Objection!
I mean, I believe it, but I'm a pretty gullible guy. They also mention that as it stands right now, 200 people are dead from the museum fire.
200 people.
Which would make Waxwork the highest kill count of any movie I've ever reviewed. Anyway, I guess the trial takes a break for a day, and Sarah and Mark head to Mr. Wilfred's house for some clues that might help him out. Luckily for them, he left him a message in case something like this might happen.
Afternoon, Sarah.
Sir Wilfred?
Hope you're both doing well.
Always thinking one step ahead, that Wilfred. He tells him to follow Alice through the looking glass, a reference to the book of the same name. But if this is so important, then why speak in riddles?
Adios and good luck.
Wait!
Say, just do this, go here, and you'll have the answer.
Nearly forgot. How to get through the secret chamber?
Well, if they did that, we wouldn't have much of a movie now, would we? They eventually figure out that if you move the pieces on the chessboard, a secret room opens up behind a mirror. Inside, they look around and find all the weird and macabre stuff that you would expect. Sarah gets fixated on a painting, and just before she can take a real good look at it, Mark stops her. He just found a Cartarian time door opener. I guess it's kind of like a garage door opener, but for time doors. He reads that this is something angels used to use to travel through time. It's pretty neat stuff. They figure that they could use this to get the evidence they need. Then Sarah could prove that she's not guilty. He opens up a time door and they both head on in, falling into a black pit. Until these vampire bat-looking creatures take them their separate ways. We see Mark's past home videos and then he's in the womb? What's going on here? Finally, he's somewhere recognizable, and soon he discovers he's in Victor Frankenstein's manor. Just like in the last movie, when you're in this dimension or time or whatever, you become that character. Here, Mark's Henry. Sarah's here too, and she's the character of Elizabeth. But for now, she doesn't remember her past. Igor shows Henry down to the basement where the monster's kept. So there's no "it's alive" scene here. He goes to give the creature some leftovers for dinner when he notices Frankenstein's notes. they could use this to help Sarah win the court case. How? I don't really know, but that's the plan, I guess. He races off to Sarah's room, and after knocking some sense into her, she remembers that, yes, she is indeed Sarah and not Elizabeth. They can leave and go home, but Victor Frankenstein catches them. He assumes that they're a couple, and he wants Elizabeth for himself. Just then, an angry mob attacks the house, demanding to kill the monster. I mean, it is a Frankenstein story, you kinda have to have an angry mob. They all end up in the basement, where Mark remembers, like in the first movie, if you don't give them any power, they can't hurt you.
Come on, hit me.
And no, that's not the case here anymore. Eventually, the monster gets free. Mark and Sarah lose the book, and the creature takes people out left and right as our heroes get whisked off to another time. Next, Mark's in the movie The Haunting. I actually have a lot to say about this film, but that's gonna have to wait for another time. For now, just know that these people are all here researching ghosts and trying to prove their existence scientifically. They're led by John Loftmore, who's played by Bruce Campbell? Strap in, this is gonna get silly. But first, we have to see what Sarah's been up to, and she's taken to an alien-like world. They even mention that these things busted out of them and are now running around the ship. An alarm goes off, and they rush to get on their spacesuits to try to make an emergency escape. But it's too late for that, and they're attacked. They blow a hole in the side of the ship and hold on for dear life. But that doesn't work, because, get this, aliens can hold on to things too. It does manage to get a hold of one of them and makes him pop. Sarah and another guy get away, and we hop over to Mark, who hears loud banging inside the haunted house. Everyone comes running, wondering what it was.
What was that?
They have a machine to measure the activity, but there's nothing. Later on, the pounding comes back. Then we see a ghost that says underneath the diamond. Whatever that means. The door bleeds, faces come out of it, and really, who knows what's going on at this point? They end up in the basement where Bruce is chained up, getting eaten alive by a crow. Mark gets him down, and this is when the movie goes all slapsticky. Honestly, it's great stuff.
That was the wrong rope.
Mark gets him back up and notices a diamond shape on the floor. This must be what the ghost was talking about. And sure enough, underneath, he finds a skeleton.
You found her, Douglas.
All they need to do now is read from the Bible, and the ghost will be absolved. Or something like that. But the spirit of her father won't make it easy. He possesses Eleanor here, and she starts throwing things at Mark, only for them to hit Bruce, including a bag of salt. Mark tries to wash it away with some water, only to find out that it's vinegar. It's great stuff, and the whole time Bruce Campbell is just so nice and understanding.
It's going numb.
I'm not gonna lie, this is the best part of the whole movie. Mark ends up reading from the Bible, frees the spirit, and makes it onto another time door. Back over to Sarah, and it looks like they're in big trouble. But then, Mark comes over to save the day.
Sarah.
He says the Frankenstein book is still lost, but he did manage to find a voodoo Petra coffin, which will bring things back from the dead. So they can use this as evidence for her court case. Who knows how he got it, but there it is. The alien attacks. Mark blows it up, but he loses the time door opener in the process. He and Sarah fall through another door just as the whole ship blows up. Let's hope they made it back to Earth in their time, because if not, what are they gonna do? They don't have the time door opener anymore. Well, no, they're not in their time, and I'm not even sure they're on Earth. Instead, it's some medieval kingdom with knights and the whole works. Honestly, if this was where I was stuck, it wouldn't be the worst place in the world. Well, they don't have a Taco Bell, so I guess that would suck, but I mean, at least you're not on a spaceship getting chased by aliens. This is where the bulk of the movie takes place. Some knights come in and kidnap Sarah, leaving Mark to fend for himself. An old man by a tree tells him of a guy named Scarabus, an evil sorcerer who in this world is Sarah's brother. Sarah also is set to marry the king, so there's that too. Mark must sneak into the castle, kill Scarabus to rescue Sarah. But Scarabus is into some weird stuff. Like I said, he's a sorcerer dealing with black magic, and through a ritual, he can turn this girl into a cat person. He absorbs her power, so I think he can be a cat person too? I'm not really sure, and it's weird, but we get a neat rubber monster, so that's cool. Mark and Sarah meet up, and everything looks like we're gonna have a happy ending. But they get caught, and Mark is thrown into the dungeon. Later on, Mark gets a visit from an old friend, Mr. Wilfred, but he's a raven now. He explains that Mark is God's chosen warrior. That's right, God with a capital G. Apparently, there's this land called Cartagra, where good and evil fight out in little stories, like what we've seen. Similar to a video game, God's the good guy, and the devil's the bad guy. If things go right in the game, things are good on Earth. If something goes wrong, however, something bad happens on Earth. A delicate balance that Mark has been chosen to keep on the good side. Wilfred gives him the time door opener again and tells him that he can only open the door back home twice. He used it up once getting to Cartagra, so he's only got one shot left. How do you open it? Well, Wilfred says take a minute to think about it, then guess. Again, what's with all the riddles? Just tell him what to do. But at least now Mark's free and he's able to escape. He opens up the cages for the other prisoners and makes his way upstairs to get out of here with Sarah. But she's pretty busy with the king, who's about to be poisoned by Scarabus. Well, it's his assistant, George, who does the poisoning, but you know what I mean. He passes out, and they take him away. But what's Scarabus up to? Well, Mark's about to find out. Using black magic, Scarabus plans on impersonating the king, so that he can marry Sarah. But wait, that's his sister. Okay, so there's that. Luckily, despite the fake king telling them not to, Mark convinces the men to go down a secret tunnel and save the real king.
Who is this brave young man?
Mark and Sarah find Scarabus, and after Mark gets the tar beat out of him, Sarah finally puts it together that he wants to marry her. And seeing that she'll never fall in love with him, Scarabus orders Sarah to be killed.
George.
Mark grabs George in the nuts, stopping him. And Scarabus and Mark sword fight as the time doors open up and they're tossed into other dimensions left and right. There seems to be a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scene, then to a mall where they take a break from fighting each other so that they can kill a horde of zombies a la Dawn of the Dead. I would think Scarabus at this point would be like, what the heck is going on? But no, he just keeps on fighting. Next on to Jack the Ripper, then Nosferatu. And then my favorite of the bunch, Godzilla. With a funny little dubbing joke.
Oh no!
Finally, they're back in medieval times. But Mark brought something back with him, a zombie hand. They push Scarabus into the dungeon where he keeps all the animal people, and the Catwoman is the thing that finally takes him out. Now all they need to do is get home. But how? Take a minute to think about it, then guess is another line from Through the Looking Glass. So, just like before, they find a mirror and open a door. But there's a problem. They both can't fit through. So Mark pushes Sarah back home with the zombie hand so she can use it as evidence. Mark gives a tearful goodbye as the camera zooms out and we see his way too tight pants. Sarah's back home. She can finally take a peek at that painting, which turns out to be Mark. Then she's at her court case, where, with this new evidence, she's found not guilty and set free. Outside, amongst the crowd of people, is a guy who works for the oldest package delivery service in the world. And, just like Marty McFly in Back to the Future 2, Sarah gets a letter from the past. But with this letter is the time door opener, so she can finally join him. If it was me, my note would have said, "Join me, and bring a few crunch wraps with you." And that was Waxwork 2, Lost in Time. What'd you think? For me personally, it didn't quite grip me as much as the first one did. Here it's not so much horror, but more fantasy, which is fine, it's just not my cup of tea. I think Zach Galligan did a much better job this time around, but some ideas just didn't make sense. Why is it that these things can hurt you now all of a sudden if you don't give them power? That was the big twist from the first movie. And making Mark God's playable character for a video game against the devil is kind of a weird idea. The whole other world Katagra didn't really work either. If this is some other dimension at different times, then how could Mark drop off the letter and time door opener in the real world? I thought he could only open the door twice, and he did that to get Sarah back home. It all just doesn't make sense when you stop and think about it. And that's why the best scene in the whole movie is the Bruce Campbell scene. It's so silly and funny that it forces you to turn your brain off and just laugh. If you enjoyed Waxwork, watch Waxwork 2. It's a fitting conclusion. However, keep in mind it's a bit more fantasy with horror roots, if that makes any sense. I give it 2 salt and vinegar poured into Bruce Campbell's open wounds out of 4.
Douglas, the book is upside down.